travel with me.
Hey fellow humans, Mina here. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that random, really weird and out of context video from last week on CuteSpeak. I thought I'd keep that going this week, not on CuteSpeak, but on languages. And this actually can apply to your writing if you're writing fantasy. Now, I don't technically write fantasy, but I sort of did in the past, and I even actually have a short story, a fantasy type short story that I wrote. It's on my website, on my blog, if you feel like looking for it. It's called War of the Gods, I believe. Yeah, you gorgeous hunk of fluff. But like, I made up a whole entire culture and race of people and like their culture and everything, including their language, back in high school during math class. I didn't pass math for a good long time. I wonder why. I mean, thankfully I've never failed the grade, but I was very close because of math. And that's probably because I was busy making up literal worlds and languages. So as you already know, I got a lot of languages going on in my head, and so I know a little bit about like some grammatical structures of languages. And so I made up one. It's called Hikaran. That was Hikaran, in case you wanted to know. And it was a very common phrase that the Hikaran say to everyone. It's kind of like just like a common set phrase that you say to people when you greet them. Mostly the anachabake, which is evil is here. It's just like be aware of your surroundings. And the first part was like remember to bring peace to the world. So it's just something you say when you meet a fellow Hikaran. What you do? So anyway, I thought I'd share a little bit about my language Hikaran, and maybe it'll help you if you're writing fantasy, create a language for said fantasy world. You don't necessarily have to go this in depth, but like if you don't just want to make up random letters and hope that it sounds cool for a fantasy thing and you actually want to have the full language, you can do it. So first off, you gotta decide the writing system. And is it a alphabet type system or is it a phonetic type system? Like Japanese is phonetic, like ma, mi, mu, me, mo. Those are like phonetic sounds together, sprung together to make words. Whereas you got English, like A, B, C, D, those are the alphabet. Then you put a bunch of alphabets together and essentially those alphabets just become words. So Hikaran is an alphabet type language, and it has 27 letters all written in like the fancy Hikaran way, which I'll be popping it on the screen somewhere. And they also have the punctuation and other sort of markers and, or rather some stuff that we call particles. I just like to call them markers. And all these fancy symbols make up the Hikaran language. And just as an FYI, when you're making up a language for your fantasy world, you don't have to like go as in depth as I did, but also I'm just also not going to go as in depth as I did myself in this video, or else we'd be here a really long time because languages are long and complex, and I'm the only one who can read and write this damn thing anyway, so like, what's the point? This is just for fun because I feel like doing a fun language video that isn't technically a language, although all languages started out as gibberish. Anywho, for your language, I would like to make a suggestion and figure out your word order per se, like in English. It's subject, verb, object, but in Hikaran, it's subject, object, verb, kind of like the Japanese language or even like the Korean language. And as an example that we're just going to use for the entirety of this video, we're going to use that common phrase that I used at the start, anachabake, which means evil is here. It's a common phrase uttered often due to the inherent evil that resides within one's unpure body. As a side note, the Hikarans are very spiritual, with gods and stuff that are real, because you know, it's in the physical world. But like, we're not going to go into that, but their whole being for everything, their culture all resides around the gods. So like, that's why this phrase is uttered often, because like, the gods are real and everything they do revolves around the gods and goddesses. So yeah, anachabake literally translates to evil is here, or in more literal term, here, evil is. We're going to get into the specifics of in a second. So in my language, I use particles, which are things that like connect and say the meaning of the words in the sentences. Like h is the subject-object particle, and it's used in every single sentence regardless of what you're talking about. You kind of cannot omit it unless you're just saying like just the verb, like I don't know, go. But like if you're saying evil is here, you have to say ana h bake. You can't just say ana bake. You have to say the h in every single sentence because they want you to know what they're freaking talking about. So if you want, you can get fun with these particles. Like some of them are the verb particles that like this is the verb of the sentence, and some of them are like verbal punctuation marks. So it's like, I'll get into those in a second. So you use those and it gives a feeling of what you're trying to express in the sentence, and it also sort of changes the meaning of the sentence. Now, your language doesn't necessarily have to have these, but I like doing them because like in the Asian languages that I was like kind of basing my inspiration from, you got particles like in Korea you got nun, ga, ka, u. In Japanese you got like wa and de and ni and to and stuff like that. Each particle is designed to tell a different part of the sentence and let the listener know exactly what the sentence is about, where it's going, what it's doing, and all that fun jazz. So I'll just give some examples, some common Hikaran ones. The possessive marker, ko. This one is kind of like the equivalent of the apostrophe s in English, like this is his thing, or it's Mina's cat. In Hikaran, the possessive markers goes after the h. So it technically in literal English should be like evil h mine here is, if you're going literal, because it always goes after the subject particle. So in using the phrase anaha bake, you can say anaha go bake, which is now gives a different meaning, and it's now translated as evil is mine. So because they use a ko, the verb now translates as into mine instead of is. Next we have the particle ne, which is an agreement marker. It goes at the end of the sentence. So using the example yet again, it'll go ne. It's most commonly translated as right or yeah in English. Is like evil is here, right? It may also give off the feeling of uncertainty. Next we have the particle ka. When added to the end of the sentence, it gives the feeling of wanting. It's commonly used at the end of the sentence and implies that you want more information from the listener. So ka will actually translate to I want evil to be here. And the last one we're going to talk about is she. Not the pronouns, but it's pronounced she. Different spelling. When added to the end of the sentence, it gives off the feeling of a verbal exclamation point. It also gives the air of excitement. So, she will translate to evil is here with an exclamation point. So yeah, you're probably a little bit like about this video, but I just thought it'd be fun to make a little bit on my language. If you're writing about a language, you don't have to go into the full details, at least not in your writing itself. It's good to know some grammatical stuff for yourself before you write it, just like any world building. If you're building like a fantasy world where there's a castle, we don't have to know that the walls are made of stone, for instance. I mean, you can say that, but if it's not necessarily relevant to the plot, then we don't have to know that those stones are lined with magic unless it's actually relevant to the story. You can go on for days world building. You can do what I did and build a literal culture of people, because like I've actually wrote a blog post and I still left out a lot about this whole culture thing, but like if you want to check out the Hikarans and a little more in depth about the language itself, I'll link in the description down below the blog post that I wrote about it. But yeah, if I were to write a story including them, I wouldn't go into all of the details because it's not necessary to know that, but it does actually help for you as the writer to know this information, because that way it could help shape and define the characters that you're writing and what they do and what they'd say and how they'd interact with the world. but that doesn't mean that the reader has to know 100% of every 100 pages that you wrote on world building, because that's just a big exposition and info dump, and no one wants to read that, which is why even in my blog post I left out so much of the culture, because like I could go on for days. Like I've been doing this since like middle school, and where Wade has middle school days. So essentially I just wanted to share a little bit of my language building, you know, quick grammatical thing, quick world building I guess, so that you can get an idea of what you can do if you wanted to include a language in your world building. And remember, you don't have to use it all, it just only if necessary, and it's good to actually know. And then it's also cool because if someone asks you, hey, can you say something in this language, and you can say it, and it's totally dope. Plus it's also dope to say I made up a damn language. But again, every languages are technically made up, including English. I mean, it all had to start somewhere. Someone said random word like apple, and wow, they're like, what the hell's an apple? And apple became a thing. And if you say apple enough times, it's gonna sound really weird, just like any other word. So that's all I got for you today. Remember that if you want to pre-order South, which you really should, I highly recommend it. Links are in the description down below, and don't forget to enter the pre-sale giveaway where you can win some dope-ass prizes, including the mother flipping Kindle. And the last video of the year, we'll be announcing another winner in the contest. So if you want that person to be you, be sure to enter it down below. Pre-order, enter the giveaway contest, and bam, it's that easy. So if you want to keep hearing more about those, be sure to follow me on all your favorite socials. Links below. Stay safe and take care. Bye.